If you ask someone on the street what happened to Saab, they would probably tell you that the company went bankrupt over a decade ago. Yet today, Saab designs and manufactures lethal multi-role fighter jets, advanced radar networks, and heavily armed stealth submarines. The confusion makes perfect sense. For half a century, the public knew Saab as the eccentric Swedish automaker that put the ignition key between the front seats and pioneered heated cushions to survive freezing Scandinavian winters. But those passenger cars were a byproduct of a completely different mission. The automaker was entirely a side project. The enterprise actually began in 1937 in the industrial town of Trollhättan. The Swedish government and the private investors established a new firm, Svenska Aeroplan Aktiebolaget, specifically to build combat aircraft. As Europe moved towards Second World War, Sweden maintained a strict policy of armed neutrality. Without military alliances to rely on, the country had to produce its own war machine from scratch to deter any potential invasion. The engineers in Trollhättan were handed a precise mathematical problem, design the hardware necessary to guarantee the survival of an isolated nation. When the war ended and defense budgets shrank, those aerospace engineers needed a way to keep their factories running and their design skills sharp during peacetime. They turned their attention to the civilian market. For their first automobile, Project 92, the aircraft designers applied military aerodynamics to a teardrop-shaped body, creating a passenger car that sliced through the air like an airplane fuselage. The commercial success of these quirky vehicles created a steady stream of revenue. That cash flow was quietly funneled back into top-secret, highly advanced military research and development. The core problem for the defensive division remained the same. Sweden is a sparsely populated country with massive borders. They could never match the raw troop numbers or production volume of a neighboring superpower. The solution was a strict engineering doctrine, prioritizing austere, dispersed, and asymmetric warfare. You can see this doctrine clearly in the JAS-39 Gripen, their current premier fighter jet. Instead of relying on vulnerable multi-billion-dollar air bases, the Gripen is engineered to land on standard, snow-covered Swedish highways. Once on the ground, a mobile crew of mostly young conscripts can refuel and rearm the jet in under just 10 minutes, using basic equipment. On the ground, they apply the exact same logic to anti-tank warfare. They developed a lightweight, single-use, shoulder-fired weapon that allows one infantryman to destroy a heavily armored vehicle. They built it with the 84mm caliber 8.4, which they spelled out for export market as the AT4. These highly specific hardware designs allowed a small military force to stretch its resources, defending enormous tracts of land and airspace against an adversary with a vastly larger budget. The same resources math applied to the Baltic Sea. Maintaining naval superiority usually requires massive, financially crippling nuclear submarines. Instead of a nuclear reactor, Saab's naval division integrated the Stirling Air Independent Propulsion System. By using a closed-loop cycle that generates power without consuming external oxygen or producing exhaust bubbles, the system allows a diesel-electric submarine to remain submerged and completely hidden for weeks. Today, this technology operates actively in the Swedish naval fleet, delivering the near-silent stealth of a nuclear submarine at a fraction of the cost. By prioritizing efficiency over sheer scale, the engineers mapped out the practical blueprint for outmaneuvering global superpowers beneath the waves. As the Cold War ended and global markets shifted in the 1990s and 2000s, the company began to shed its civilian disguise. They spun off the automotive division, eventually selling full ownership to General Motors. When the car brand struggled under its new ownership and ultimately filed for bankruptcy in 2011, it left the public with a distinct impression that the Swedish innovator had simply died out. In reality, the original defense contractor was generating billions in revenue. Free from the financial burden of passenger cars, they rapidly expanded, acquiring legacy radar and underwater technology giants like Bofors and Kockums. Then, in 2024, the geopolitical map shifted. Sweden officially abandoned its decades-long policy of armed neutrality and joined the NATO alliance. For Saab, this accession brought an immediate corporate consequence. The company gained full integration into the NATO Support and Procurement Agency framework. Decades of highly specialized technology, from electric warfare jammers to drone defense systems, became instantly accessible for direct procurement by the entire Allied military bloc. The quirky automaker did not fail. It successfully funded its own transformation. shedding an outdated civilian disguise to fulfill the exact purpose it was built for, serving as the shield of the modern free world.